Well, here we are at the infamous lime kiln here today. Found some very interesting facts about this place and its true history, and I wanted to share it with you today. I was able to actually write it all down so that way I could actually remember it. Fortunately, it snowed last night and this morning, so we did come out here, and some things are kind of covered. It's very cold, but still, fortunately, you can still see everything quite well. But this was actually not just any lime kiln that's connected to Maxville and the very southern tip of Perry County. This was actually Augustus Culver's lime kiln. Now, this was actually Augustus Culver's land, and this was the Culver lime kiln. This was one of the last lime kilns to be active in Perry County and in the Maxville area. And also, this thing was built with, where the history gets interesting is that this was actually built with Savage brick. When you've probably never heard of Savage brick, that's probably because it wasn't made here in Ohio. It was actually made in Mount Savage, Maryland, on the far western edge of that state, in between West Virginia and Pennsylvania. So, not overly far away, but yet still very intriguing. And that brick was only made in 1848 to 1864. After that, a different company took over that fire brick manufacturing, and it was called the Union Company. So that kind of dates this thing, because we weren't sure about the date of it, if it was pre-Civil War or post-Civil War. So this is where the history really gets interesting. This barn is what it was used for when this was standing, and as this was a farm for the last 100 plus years. This was actually the lime storage house. So this would have actually been filled with, and where they would have weighed the lime at. And within this, the Howdishell family said that this was actually a piece of wood that was inside of this at one time, many years ago. They saw that it was carved with initials, and that it had a date of around 1860 something. They couldn't remember. It has been many years since this has fallen in, but it does kind of give us a date to the approximate time of when there was something going on here. So this is interesting because this place was supposedly one of the last lime kilns active, and this place went out of the last lime kiln active around the Maxville area was actually 1885, so quite late, about 20 years after the end of the Civil War. So it's kind of is a conundrum in that, according to the documented history of when this was active with the Culver, actually called the Culver and Stalter Lime Company, which would date from 1870s and 80s. And there's more evidence that I found to indicate that. However, the things that was made to build this structure and the evidence of carvings show that it was possibly pre-Civil War. So my hypothesis is on all of this is that this place was actually built prior to the Civil War to be used, maybe like 1859 or 60 or even 61. And then with the outbreak of the Civil War, the soldiers, there was a need for people to enlist in the service. But also, I did find in some Perry County history that the commercial industry in the county and here in Maxville also ceased right before the war, or right as the war began, and then it didn't really start back up until about 1870 again. So quite a considerable time after the war ended is when kind of life and business got back to normal here in Perry County. So that is my best guess, is that this place was actually, as I said, built before the Civil War, but not even used until after, and went from being one of the kilns used during the big limestone lime boom, you could say, in Maxville, and it was actually one of the last ones. So it has a very interesting and unique history, and the evidence also for it being used later is the belts that were the iron belts that were attached. They don't seem to be hand forged, all the bolts and everything, and some of the pieces that were part of the barn, or the actual lime house here, seem to be the same structure and even same size bolts, and they seem industrially made. So this would point to them being constructed after the Reconstruction era, after the Civil War, so about post 1877. So there's that evidence for that as well. Another piece of interesting evidence, though, I found, and it connects a place just on down, a couple hundred yards away, or over here to my right. and it is it's kind of covered up with brush, but there is some old sandstone blocks similar to the ones that are here. Then it was actually what I'm fairly certain was the office of the Culver and Stalter Lime Company. And thanks to a friend of mine, I found in the history of the Hocking Valley, Ohio, a book from 1883, a guy by the name of William Edgar Plukarp was the weighmaster and bookkeeper for the Culver and Stalter Lime Company at this location. He worked there from 1877 to 1879. So at the very least, we know that this was active from 1877 to 79, without a doubt. And he then later worked for the Winona Furnace Iron, or the Iron Company at their furnace as a manager and bookkeeper, which was actually quite literally maybe half a mile just up over the hillside from here. So very interesting that we found a name to put on this place as well. So that to me was fascinating, because you're able to put kind of a face to this place, and also the initials that were here, and the romantic idea that this was kind of the last time that somebody that maybe went off to war, perhaps died in the war, that built this place was actually here standing in his home county. So these pieces of evidence kind of can all be really pieced together to create this great story of this place, and kind of point to the human history of it, as well as the geological history, that the limestone that was here, that was quarried, and all of these hills surrounding us here, kind of they connect. And also what was here, we do want to show you that we just found right before we started filming this piece of evidence, and this might have been a piece of a structure to actually weigh the lime after it was taken out of here from the kiln, and was used on this rod here across to actually weigh it. And so Mr. Plukarp, that I found information about, who, like as I said, was the weighmaster, possibly even used this. It's all speculation, of course. We don't know that for sure. This could have been from the lime kiln or from the kiln as it was closing or something, one of the last pieces here that was added. But again, we don't know. But it just goes to show the immense history of this place, and how well preserved it is, especially being possibly the last kiln around the 1880s that was even active around here. So the history is just kind of oozes out of this place. Very, very intriguing, and it's just a place that I think, as all of you have seen and kind of gravitated toward this, in some of the posts whenever I would post pictures about this place. And I've been gravitated toward it as well, just coming out here a couple of times and driving by. It's very incredible. So I really have enjoyed kind of sharing the history of this place, and there is more history around here that I will share with you in photos and such at a later date. But this place really, to know its history and to be able to piece it together has really kind of made this probably the most enjoyable post that I've done for my page here, whether it's a video or a written article. So I hope you found this video enlightening as well, and the information I was able to find and dig up, which was very difficult and very time consuming, but it was very much well worth it.